Hello, everyone. I'd like to give a content warning for discussion of COVID-19, the pandemic, and quarantine. Hauntingly Humdrum, a slice of life Halloween anthology. This episode, Slip Slidin' Away.
This is my quarantine story. My life in isolation. We've all got one now, right? Mine might not be any more interesting, but at least it's unique. I mean, there's only one of me. At least on this planet. This part's kind of funny, so sit with this image. Stuck at home like anyone else, the giant, human-eating Blob. Watching the world through a window, afraid to slide around the block because of what I might catch. For all of... hell, has it been 7 months now? 8? It's been me in this apartment. I read until I couldn't focus on books anymore. I've played every farming sim that's out there. I've watched every movie on Quiver. I know, stereotypical big monster sits up at night with horror movies. I like what I like. The problem was, I'd started losing pieces of myself. Attention, this is not a metaphor. Actual pieces. I'd be sitting at the computer half the day, and when I got up, some of me has seeped between the floorboards. Or I'd be cooking, for one these days, always for one, and not notice that a bit has slid down the kitchen drain. Or I'd go out to check the mail, which I do 3 or 4 times a morning sometimes, and lose half a pound crossing the doormat. I don't know why I've got the kind with the big plastic loops anyway. I never thought about it until now. It didn't bother me at first. Blobs lose a bit now and then. It's just part of how we work. Like humans losing skin cells, which, as disgusting as it sounds, you shed constantly. We're pretty sanitary in comparison. It may look like the remains of a potluck Jell-O salad, but the bits melt away and they're gone. But eventually, it was happening more and more often. I could feel the difference in my shape, you know? Something in my surface tension starting to slip. It built up. The slipping under doors, the times I'd forget about the heat grating until I'd crossed it, and before I knew it, I was spending whole days in the tub with the drain plug tamped down, shaking, barely keeping myself together. Or I'd go the whole other way, panic and slither frantic circles around the apartment with no sense of purpose except the movement, and then I'd turn around and there's bits of me scattered to every corner. Like, bits doesn't even convey it properly. Don't worry, I can see you worrying. This isn't a gloomy story. I mean, it is, and not just because I'm a monster who once tried to devour you and everyone you love, but there's a better part coming. I wish I could take credit for making it better. I wish this were I finally stopped shaking and scattering and pulled my amorphous self up by my metaphorical bootstraps moment. But it was this chat session I wound up in. There's a Discord for the bunch of us. The giant Gila monster and the Tingler and the body snatchers. They weren't having a great time either, let me tell you. And the 50-foot woman said, "I thought I was self-sustaining when the world was more normal. But I only felt like that because I was constantly in motion, chasing the next project, the next goal, the next victim without thinking about, is this really good for me? Now there's nothing left but that pause." Wow. That hit me. Hit me. Rippled right to the core and back again. I could have written those words myself. I wouldn't have. I mostly lurk. You don't type well when you're a heap of sentient goo, but I sat with that for a while and realized that's really what I was feeling. It wasn't that the sliding away was some new experience. It's just that I'd lost every other sense of purpose, and I was obsessing over the little bits that always go. I felt different, sure, but that's because the world is different, and the things we lose are harder to hide. So, what do you do when you're the embodiment of ooze and you come to that harsh realization? It's not like knowing fixes the problem and you suddenly grow a thicker skin, but it did help to understand that I'd never really kept myself together, and I could use this time to try to figure out how that would work. I'm talking to someone about it a couple of times a week now. Some days it helps. Some days I find myself back in the tub again. But then I just tell myself, okay, I'm here because this is what I need right this moment. And there's less shaking, less pacing. These days I don't make myself cook. I order in a nice delivery person and settle down. I thought my story was unique, but now that I've told it, I'm not so sure. This is the Blob, the indestructible creature, signing off from the eye of the pandemic. Keep on creeping and crawling.
Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Hauntingly Humdrum. This episode was written by DJ Sylvis. The Blob was performed by Mike Cuellar, host of the Weird Tales podcast. Sound design by Nico Goldstein. The music used for the intro and outro of the podcast is The Show Must Be Go by Kevin MacLeod. Links for transcripts and cast and crew information can be found in the show notes. Happy Halloween!